Welcome to my deep dive into Insidious. Now, before we get into the actual Insidious films themselves, I want to, talk about a bit of background on the first Insidious with James Wan and Lee Winnell, who, as a duo, they're most known for obviously Saw. Oh, I love Saw. Or, but James Wan, he's probably most well known for, like him by himself, is either The Conjuring or Aquaman, like just by himself, and that makes me laugh. He's a good director though. Oh, and then Lee Winnell, probably the Invisible, like by himself. Probably the Upgrade or the Invisible Man. He's probably most known for. Like projects he's done that are good. Post him and James Wan working together, but when they work together, it's magic. Now let's get into a bit of history with the two of them before we can talk. Before I can recap the first Insidious film. This is more of a recap, and it's not supposed to be too intellectual and insightful because there's other people who have already done that. I recommend the YouTuber Haunted Hippie her video on Insidious. If you want like a deep dive, this is more like a deep. It is a deep dive, but it's more into like history and recapping it, and with Matt added also my opinions on it. But for more intellectual stuff, there's other YouTubers you can visit. So now let's get into the history of these two. So first, with the creation of Saw, James Wan Wheeler they graduated from Melbourne, and since they didn't have much money, so they had to think of a story that had minimal cast, minimal locations, and was just cheap. So, but the Blumhouse method really, and then for like inspiration of other pioneers with minimal budget, they looked to Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith. Now, Kevin Smith obviously did Clerks and that comedy stuff, but the thing I know him for is he was on this documentary, Blumhouse's Condominium of Horror, real good documentary, and obviously he did Tusk, and that's more where I know him from than than anything else really. So I just thought I'd mention him quickly since he's one of the inspirations James Wan and Lee Winnell had for the budget and making of Saw. So obviously they just started out with the concept of two guys trapped in a bathroom together. Not as homoerotic as you'd think, it's still a bit gay, but not gay. And then obviously Lee Winnell turned that idea into the script that would become Saw. So, since they couldn't find funding for their horror movie in Australia, yeah, they took one of the best scenes from the script, the most iconic scene from the first movie, the scene with Amanda with the bear trap, and Lee Winnell filmed the scene. And and they made it into a short movie as just proof of concept for that they could do it in a short budget. And when I do see like, because obviously Adam, like his character is who Lee now plays, but when I see him like in the Amanda outfit, I think Twink. Moving on now, when they went to the USA, they went to America with their script and short film, but I'm very proud of what they did because they refused to give away the rights to their project unless one, James Wan could film, like direct, and Lee Winnell could star. Which I'm glad they stuck by that because the film's great. And yeah, I'm just glad they stuck. I'm glad they stuck by that because not every single creator does stick by what they really intend to do just for money. And it's glad that they clearly had a passion and they stuck to it. So this method of, refusing to do anything unless they got these two simple things, and obviously the short film also helped anyway. This method they had done, it got them attention from Evolution Entertainment and, more importantly, Twisted Pictures, who have been the producers for most of the Saw films. I think like this new one, number 11, when it does come out, I don't know if they're involved. I know Lee Winnell and James Wan are involved with Saw 11 now, which rocks. And anyway, they got the green light to do the film full picture, and the rest is history. Saw was a big success. We've got the whole franchise, but more importantly, Saw it it made James Wan and Lee Winnell famous. It was their first hit. Their first film was a hit, and it was good for them. And now we get into some of their lesser successful stuff when they start to do haunted houses. Now, with Saw, Lee Winnell and James Wan they left after the first one's success because they wanted they felt they had done everything they could with the original thing. They did everything they wanted to do. They thought like the producers could do a good job with the sequels without them, which they did. Like the Saw sequels are good. So then, and they also wanted to work on the film Dead Silence, which we'll get to. Don't worry. It's all a part of building up to Insidious. All this, it's important information. So they went to work on Dead Silence, believing the producers could handle Saw themselves and in a respectful and good way. And yeah, neither of them were available at the time of Saw 2 making because they were doing their another dream project, Dead Silence, which that's what I really like about James Wan and Lee Winnell, those two, because they do dream projects. They care more about the vision and creativity rather than just money, and that's very rare now in Hollywood. So I'm very happy that those two really do are more into the creative side of stuff than the money side. Now, as for Dead Silence, it bombed. Like it was a failure both critically and commercially, which sucks for them. Like I think it has 22% on Rotten Tomatoes, which again probably isn't the best rating because Rotten Tomatoes is a bit stingy. I recommend actually using Letterboxd instead. I haven't had a look on the Letterboxd score right now, but I do recommend just going to Letterboxd because they are probably the better ones. I use me when I review stuff that isn't on this channel. I use Letterboxd just because I think they're better. So with Dead Silence, it kind of clashed against the trends of the early 2000s that were mainly remakes or Saw, which is a bit funny. That the guys behind Saw kind of created trends and they didn't want to follow them, which is why kind of Dead Silence failed. It grossed 22.4 million at the box office on a 20 million box office. Like not budget, 20 million budget, and only grossed back like 22.4 million, which I think that's bombing, which that's bad. But I'd say it's still the film itself is still worth checking out because hey, you might like it. It's not a dumpster fire of a film. It's James Wan and Lee Winnell. I think anything they do has an element of good to it. Most of the time, lots of good to it, but even if it's a small amount, it's still worth checking out. Another reason Dead Silence failed at the box office is because people expected James Wan, Lee Winnell. They expected the Saw effect. They expected stuff to be gory, grotesque, and realistic and trappy, whereas Dead Silence it's more of like a gothic ghost story, which is very different from Saw. So it was kind of people didn't like that because it was different. How dare people do something different and unique? I know. As for Universal, the dirtbags, they demanded choppy editing and a score to match the aesthetic and feel of Saw, which kind of clashed against, the gothic feel of the haunted doll kind of movie. So yeah, that's another reason that it probably failed. And obviously, there's also there's just people in general not liking the narrative choices of the film, like the twist ending, feeling it was forced and feeling there was logic gaps. And the shame is it came just before the revival of haunted house movies, which James Wan and Lee Winnell made, basically, because after Conjuring, that was like the boost in haunted houses, along with today's topic, Insidious. So now we can get into the recap of Insidious. So Insidious 1, you have the Lambert family. They move into this home. You've got Josh, the father, Dalton, the youngest son, takes a fall. uh, ends up getting into a coma because of a demon, the red lipstick face demon, and that demon design is great. I'll talk more about the designs and what they mean at the end of the video when I do like a tier list thing where I get into the meanings of the demon's appearances, ranking them by metaphor and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah, and like so, Josh has to go into it further after getting help from, I think it's Elise. She's like this paranormal expert, and it's very much similar to The Conjuring, but I like that. What separates it is like Conjuring is very old school, whereas this is like bringing technology into ghost hunting. Anyway, so Josh actually going further, Elise ends up dying, but Josh ends up being rescued. But at the end, like the Black Bride gets inside Josh, and it turns out this Black Bride plays into Insidious too. So Insidious, one great film, has one of the best modern day jump scares ever. It's very fun and it's it's fun. Like it's not too much heavy, in my opinion. I think that's mainly because I don't take ghost stories that seriously. I do usually just see them as fun, so that is probably just me. But yeah, it's a good movie. And now moving in to Insidious Chapter 2. So as for Insidious Chapter 2. Oh, well, actually, it's just 2. They don't say chapter anything until part 3. That is dumb. That is dumb, I'm sorry. I'll get into it more when we get to number 3, but that is dumb. That is dumb. Anyway, you start with Josh Lambert having escaped the further, but since the family don't know he's possessed by the bride in black, but we do, basically it picks up from the first one. You get that they all move into, I think, mother-in-law's house, where you find out that where you get hints that he's possessed. He's more aggressive. He talks to himself. He's crackers. He acts a bit nuts essentially. So what ends up happening next is you get this backstory throughout the film of Parker Crane, or the Bride in Black, who basically what they did is, so basically I think it's Parker Crane went through this trauma where his mother, Michelle, she's crazy. She basically wanted a daughter, but Parker's a girl's name, and she forced him to dress like a girl. Can't imagine, but bullying probably did go on for his life. But yeah, she shouts at him relentlessly when he tries to be a boy. It's very much gender dysphoria, that kind of thing. You couldn't see it as like a trans allegory, but the reason this trans allegory might work better than something like in Silence of the Lambs is because it's more forced on the person. Like the allegory is that the crazy person is the crazy person isn't the trans person, but the person saying this person can't be the gender they want to be, if that makes sense. I think that way it does work a bit better than Silence of the Lambs. It's closer to Sleepaway Camp that way, but not as bad. Still a bit like, yee, but not nearly as bad. So, using this, Parker was the bride in black, killed a bunch of people, and possesses, because of trauma, uses it to his advantage to possess Josh in the modern world. And obviously, they get through it in the end. You know, they win. So basically, how they escape is Dalton goes into the further to rescue his father, and together these spirits, these real people in the further, they all work together to break the cycle of abuse. Basically they stop the influence Michelle had over her son Parker, and then they all get, once they're back in the real world after further, their memories get erased because The Exorcist did it. That's pretty much it. Because after Exorcist, basically every ghost or horror film, possession film, has them forget about it, which Yeah, that's a good thing because I'd rather forget about it because, like, having to live through it would be awful. Like, live through these memories would be awful. Could make good money, but also just having to live through it be a piss taking pain, you know? So it makes sense why that's cliche, especially since most of the time in these possession stories happens to children and a child having to live through that. You can kind of see it as a metaphor, this trope as a metaphor for repressing trauma, much like what happens in Stephen King's It, just to a lesser extent, but still similar. So now for the next two movies, they're both prequels, and that's because obviously they killed off Elise, and well, she was the best character, and unless they wanted to carry on with the Lambert family, they had to go back to Elise, really. And well, you can't go back to the Lambert family until movie 5. Then you can do the requel. I'll get to it. My disdain with requels, I don't really like them too much. But anyway, basically, you've got this character named Quinn Brenner. She's got broken legs. She's got a deceased mother. She does the Ouija thing where you try to contact a dead family member, but it turns out it's a demon or another spirit. So yeah, you've got Elise in this alive because prequel. Yay! Anyway, she's basically gonna help Quinn because Quinn's being haunted by the man who can't breathe. Which that design, I love that design. And it's also a metaphor because it represents, the idea of the deceased and dying in a hospital bed. So it's like, for instance, cancer patient. It's kind of like that kind of thing. You've got the oxygen mask and him dressed like it is in a hospital. It's very much like people on life support and comas, that kind of vibe. Which makes sense why a younger person might find that terrifying. I mean, older people do, but especially younger people would obviously be traumatized by that, by the idea of a loved one dying, and that person who is witnessing them dying is so young and they're seeing like a family member die. That would be very traumatizing. It makes sense why Quinn would see the man who can't believe. Like, I'm guessing that's not the demon or spirit's true form, and that's just the form that they're taking because it's kind of to scare the person or to mock them, or maybe gain their trust a bit. It could be all three, because like most of the time, yes, demons like to take forms to make people scared, like in the Conjuring franchise. There's the three knocks, and that's to kind of mock and scare Christians. It's less to gain their trust, but sometimes, like with Pennywise, because I know, yeah, it's not a demon, but who cares? Pennywise, does the clown, yes, to scare people, but also to gain their trust, to lure them in. It's like Hansel and Gretel. I'm going somewhere with this, where like the candy, even though yeah, the old scary witch is scary, but the house is it's tonal dissonance, yeah, but it's also to like lure the children in. Come on, children, get in my oven, that kind of thing. And you can kind of see the man who, the breathing man, the man who can't breathe, kind of thing, kind of does that because it's like, yes, it's someone dying and it's very disturbing and morbid. But if it's a family member, you kind of trust them and think, oh, I can go to them, I can be with them. They're trustworthy, and it's kind of what a demon kind of does, and it's really cool. And the man who can't breathe, he basically does what demons usually do. It's a bit different because usually demons want to steal their soul. This time, steal their life force, which is a bit different, but same thing a demon usually does. I didn't really, outside the man who can't breathe and Elise, like they're the two things I really love about this film. Besides them, it's a bit generic compared to the other films, but like I think this one wasn't actually done by James Wan because at the time James Wan was working at The Conjuring, so this is written and directed by Lee Winnell. It's like the first film not in the Insidious franchise not to be directed by James Wan because he was working on his moneymaker at the time, The Conjuring 1 and 2. Yeah, it seems he liked to do just the first two parts in franchises and then, yeah, it's funny, honestly. Now, Elise, Quinn, they go to her further to fight the entity. It's revealed that the entity wants to trap people so it can feed off of their essence, so and life force. So it's more like Pennywise, like, or just like a spider keeping things in its web to slowly eat at them. Essentially, they use the memory of Quinn's mother to fight through the demon, and once they escape, Elise, she works through her grief and trauma so she can continue her job and work on other cases. Cause a prequel, yeah. They have to set up for the films that happened in the that came out before, but in the timeline they're in the future. So obviously they have to do setup for Insidious 1 and 2, and they can't really have Elise quit forever because she works her job in 1 and 2 before she dies in 1. But yeah, anyway, yeah, that's the whole thing, and that with prequels, you kind of know what's going on. The only prequel I've ever loved is Welcome to Derry, and that's because there's lots of storytelling potential. Besides that, there's not many prequels I love. Moving on to chapter 4. So, in number 4, Elise. This is another prequel, by the way. A cousin is, I think it's either cousin or like, it's a relative. Gets dragged into it further, so Elise goes after the cousin, the relative who's in the further, and I think it's either cousin or niece. I'm getting that vibe at least. Anyway, and she's dragged it again. One of the coolest looking demons, Keyface. I can't say that without laughing. It's like lipstick demon, Keyface. Why is the man who can't breathe and the bride? Why are those names the only ones I can take seriously? But the others, I have to laugh at. I'm sorry, it just makes me laugh. So now they're both trapped in peril. Anyway, another niece, don't know how many she has, with similar powers to Elise, basically goes there, crosses over, and helps her. Yay! And this fourth film serves as a bridge, basically, between these prequel between the two prequel films, 3 and 4, and the first Insidious movie. So it's a bridging movie that connects them. It's kind of like how Welcome to Derry. The third season probably will connect to the It films, for instance. Oh wait, no, they're doing it backwards. The third season of Welcome to Derry connects heavily to the It films, I mean, but you get my point. So you find out Elise was abused as a child in Mexico because of her abilities. As a child, she was tricked by Keyface to opening a door into further, killing her mother. Years later, returning, she found into her old home. She found a bunker where her father tortured and abused women. Cheerful. So, this is a requel and I don't like it. Maybe because requels only work with slasher films, I feel. Like the Halloween, Scream, those work as requels. But I feel like supernatural stuff doesn't work as a requel. So I'm not going to really talk about Red Door. Let's have a look what happens if it's a requel. Red-faced demon, not entities come back from the further. Family has to face trauma, and they become better, and it ends with a little tease that there might be future films. I just don't really like it, mainly because it's a requel, but it's a requel I don't much like. So we've got number 6 coming out, which Into the Further, hope it's good. Trailer looks nice, but if I was going to continue the franchise for one more movie with Elise, I'd have it like be a ghost, yeah, that helps people pass on, like go on in the further, so like have a help exercise demons and help ghosts move on while she's in the further as a ghost herself. That's all.